Hey everybody! Nice to see people in the room. I am Amy Rose Marsh and the VP of Acquisitions and Artistic Development for Concord Theatricals. And we want to welcome you to Read More Plays Club. So thank you for being here. I'm honored today to be joined by American theater legend Charles Busch, and I guess global theater legend. Charles is amazing. And we'll be discussing his newest play, The Confession of Lily Dare, which has become one of my favorites in his body of work. So I'm very excited to chat about it with him. This club focuses on recognizing select Concord Theatricals plays and musicals as important works of literature. So I hope everyone has read the play. If you haven't, it's fine. You'll probably read it after because our conversation will be so fascinating. But get your questions ready. It's going to be a lot of fun. So before Charles joins us, I wanted to take a few moments to remind everyone how the book club works. Some of you have probably heard this before, so pardon me, but we'll be talking to Charles, or I'll be talking to Charles about the play in a conversation for roughly 30 minutes. If at any time you have a question that you are burning to ask about Lily Dare or other works by Charles, please drop it into our chat, which is down on the bottom, or you can use the Q&A feature, so you can drop it in there. And then around the 30-minute mark, I'll stop talking, I'll just shut up and I'll start asking your questions to Charles. We'll open it up to a wider discussion and kind of take it from there. So I know everyone has been in a million Zoom rooms at this point. It's a lot of Zoom conversing. Hopefully we get back to live theater, but I just want to go over some basic ground rules. So we are very blessed to have Charles here, and we want to be respectful of his time and his artistry. So please frame all questions and comments in a positive, inquisitive way, and keep this room a respectful space for artists and theater lovers to connect. So thank you very much for being here. Also, a couple of plugs. This wouldn't be Play Club without some plugs. If you love discussing this book and reading plays as much as I do and all my colleagues at Concord do, feel free to register for our book club mailing list. We'll drop it into the chat. And then we'll drop the link to Lily Dare in the chat, so you can go to the Concord Theatricals website, watch all the trailers, remind yourself about the themes of the play. But also let's add Charles's website as well, because just learning more about him and his body of work is kind of an amazing experience. So check that out. Okay, now I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to introduce you to Charles, and then he will magically appear. So I have to get my bio voice going. Charles Busch is the author and star of such plays as The Divine Sister, The Lady in Question, Red Scare on Sunset, The Confession of Lily Dare, and my personal favorite, Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, one of the longest running plays in the history of off-Broadway. His play, The Tale of the Allergist's Wife, received a Tony nomination for Best Play and is the longest running Broadway comedy of the past 25 years. He wrote and starred in the film versions of his plays Psycho Beach Party and Die, Mommy Die, the latter of which won him the Best Performance Award at the Sundance Film Festival. Mr. Busch has been honored with a special Drama Desk Award for career achievement as both a performer and playwright, and received the Flora Roberts Awards for sustained achievement in theater by the Dramatists Guild. He is the subject of the documentary film The Lady in Question is Charles Busch. Please welcome Charles Busch. Charles, hello.
Here we are. Hello.
Hi. Wait, we saw you and then you disappeared again. I think you're.
I was gonna get. Oh my, terrible.
Right, I know, it's the Zoom.
Here we are.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. Hello.
Great to see you. I feel like we have met like red and blue backgrounds. It goes very well on screen together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm missing an accolade, right? Because didn't you just win something at Outfest with your latest film too? Did you want to?
Well, we won Best Ensemble Acting Award, which is quite nice. Well, yeah, and we had this incredible cast of just almost everybody in the movie has won a Tony Award or something. So it was nice that everybody got mentioned.
That's good. So we should keep an eye out for that, right? That's probably coming soon. What's the title of that film? Can you?
Called it's hard for me to say, The Sixth Reel. The Sixth Reel.
So we'll keep an eye out. But we're here, I mean, I guess I can do this lumpy segue into Lily Dare because we're talking about your film, and Lily Dare comes from a place of love for cinema.
Yeah.
So I know this is the first book club I think that we've ever had both a play to read, but also a watch list, which I had so much fun like diving into all of these trailers and the movies I could find. But I'm really interested in kind of how these films inspired you and why. Like, what was it about these period confession dramas that made you want to adapt them for stage?
Well, I mean, really, I did the bulk of my research into film between the ages of 7 and 11. So I tend to pick movie genres that just have always meant something to me. And well, as a playwright, I'm a very female-centric writer. I mean, almost really every play I've written, the protagonists are women, and it also helps since I'm a female impersonator. I don't know what you want to call me, but I've played the female lead in the majority of my plays. So yeah, so the movies that have always inspired me tended to be what were called women's pictures, and I've always been so taken with the pantheon of great actresses of the past, particularly during what we call the golden age of Hollywood. And then I guess specifically, I've always had a real fondness for movies with a mother love theme, and my own mother died when I was 7, and I do think that that might be a real pivotal aspect of my whole life, and I could probably attach just every single thing that's any choice I've ever made or artistic path I've ever taken. It's probably I could connect to that fact. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to other people who lost a parent very early, and I would think they'd agree with me that it's just something that's always been there. Yeah.
Did you find yourself, because I feel like this movie is somewhat of a departure from your other cinema works in the sense that it blends this kind of hilarious parody, and there's just really funny lines like left and right, but then there's also these very sincere moments. I mean, did you find yourself drawing from the women in your life to create those moments, or how did you?
Well, I've been working very closely for, I guess, the past 25 years with my dear friend and colleague Carl Andrus, and Carl has directed the majority of my plays over the past 25 years, and we've been experimenting for almost that entire time with the balance between outrageous comedy and pathos. And that's something that's always been in my work. I mean, really, even Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, which was a very silly kind of campy piece, there were a moment here and there that as an actor I could kind of go to that place briefly, but with so we've been experimenting with, and there have been times when we failed because we went too far in one way, but with Lily Dare, it really was a kind of an experiment to see, could we with this play have fun with the excesses of the genre, but could we get a jaded audience of 2019 or whenever it was to be as emotionally connected as if they were watching the movie on TCM? And that was the thing, and it's because we really did go out on a limb with rather extended sections of where we just really wanted it to be touching, and I was so pleased with the original production. We had highly skilled cast of actors. I mean, highly skilled, and we had to really walk a tightrope every performance. I mean, it was fascinating because I personally, as an actor, would have been rather devastated if people were laughing when I'm trying to be touching, and an audience has to be just led very carefully. And oh, I should turn off my AOL. But I'm afraid if I do that, I might lose you or something. Anyway, whatever, deal with it. All right.
Okay, we'll deal with some noises. We can.
I'm very popular, darling. At this hour, it's going to be beeping and things are good. Anyway, so the important point I was making was that we found as actors that we had to be so careful that the slightest little thing could give a miscue to an audience. There's a moment at the end, where it's very, I hope to be really touching when she's on death row and sees the daughter again. But there's some really big laughs, and the daughter has one of the biggest laughs in the whole show. I forget, I'm so bad at quoting my own plays, but she has a real bawdy kind of line, and it got a huge laugh. And I had to just wait, because then I had to come in and change the tone to serious. But I think often, the audience was waiting for me to do just some sort of look or take based on what she did. And usually in a comedy, you would do that. I would sort of like, okay, she's got that big laugh, I'll top it now by, make a response to what she said. But I couldn't do that because I wanted them to go right immediately back to the place of pathos. And I waited, sometimes it seemed like forever. And then there were times when, like, one night, I thought I would just do a slightly different physicality, and I think it was, I thought it'd be just so Laurette Taylor, just so dramatic actress. At one point I say to her something like, could you give me a kiss or something? Or I don't know, it's one of those moments. And I leaned in very close and I just whispered the line to her. And a couple of people they laughed. And I thought, what the hell? And then I thought, oh, maybe it's just a little too old movie-ish. And sometimes, a lot of times in my career I hate calling myself a parodist, because what I do really isn't parody as much as homage, but whatever I am in that career, a lot of times I get laughs as an actor, not because I'm being particularly funny, but because I'm doing it so accurately. The audience, particularly if they're very conversant with classic film, will recognize a little physical detail or vocal nuance that is just really spot on, and they'll laugh at the recognition of it. Not that I'm being campy with it, but just that, oh, that's exactly what Barbara Stanwyck would do. So it was very challenging with Lily Dare. But I have to say that every performance, I'm telling you, this is Amy, it's the truth. It's every performance of Lily Dare, you could hear people sniffling and
oh yeah,
and getting all choked up, and it was so exciting.
I mean, I think I was one of them. I was also, I have to tell you, truly shocked. And I still like rereading the play. That earthquake, it gets me I'm like, you're not expecting there to be an earthquake, and then everybody's like, they're like, oh, it's horrible, also very sudden, also. I mean, I remember like laughing, but also being repulsed at my own laughter, because like, everyone. It was
also, to be fair, it was a very low rent, low tech earthquake, because we were doing it this tiny stage, the darling Cherry Lane Theater, tiny stage, and it was so low tech that we even had a couple of the actors who had exited were like throwing fake bricks onto the stage, just tossing them, and but that's kind of the part of the fun of a show like that.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think it's so interesting that you talk about paying homage, because I feel like going through those trailers, there's a part of me that almost couldn't watch them without seeing you and kind of your performance in those trailers, which is maybe the opposite. Like maybe it should work the other way. But
I forget sometimes.
Go ahead.
I forget sometimes. No, I'll watch an old movie that I haven't seen for years, and I think, oh, that reminds me of a play of mine. Yeah, because I took it from that movie.
Yeah, I had that moment. I was like, oh, this is so much like Lily Dare. It's like, nope, the way around. But I wonder too, when you're building your scripts, and they are homages to cinema, What is that writing process like? Is it you in a room with a typewriter, or do you have to act things out to work them out? Or how does it, do you play all the characters in your room?
I guess I sort of do. I am, an actor, and I became a writer basically to give myself opportunities to act and to, I thought I had something to offer as an actor that I would never have been able to express in another writer's plays, particularly, when I was in college in 1972. This was before there was Angels in America or Short Song Trilogy or anything where there was a character that I might even be right for. So that's why that was the initial. I mean, I'd always written. I mean, I was turning out full-length plays at the age of 11, and yet, oddly enough, no teacher ever thought that I was particularly special. But he's very bitter, and yeah, I don't know what took me to the old age of 19 to figure out I could write a part for myself, but it took a while. But as a writer, I am sitting there, and I do sometimes say the line out loud, particularly the lines that I'm writing for myself. I do, and yeah, because there's a rhythm, and I hear it with the performer's rhythm.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. But I'm just sort of like a traditional writer. I just put the hours in.
Yeah.
I find though it's because I'm working on a play right now. I'm just starting. The idea is that particularly the past 15 years at least, I find that I have about 3 false starts before it really is like striking a fire from a flint. I start one idea, it could last for a month, and then I think, no, I don't see. I see where this is going, and I don't think I want to just go further. And then I'll try another one that might last. I'll be very enthusiastic for a weekend. Oh, this is a fantastic idea. And then by the end of the weekend, that's not really what I want to do. And it takes, and then finally, maybe the third or fourth one takes fire, and even that becomes a great discipline to write a first draft. It's just really unpleasant and just boring, and when there's nothing there, but I love rewriting. I just love editing and rewriting. And once I have just something, a couple, 2 pages of the scene, I just keep going back, and it's very slow because I rewrite those 2 pages endlessly and changing a word here and changing a word back, until I'm so bored with that I move on to the 3rd page. But yeah, it can take a while. Yeah.
And then are you the type that you find when you get into a rehearsal room, are you making a lot of edits then, or is it mostly the script is?
It's pretty, I work so closely with my directors, I for a career that's going on about 40 years, I've worked with very few people. I have these long relationships, and with Carl, I mean, I don't even know how many plays we've done and revivals of old plays and all this, and so my relationship with the director is often like with people I hear about with dramaturgs. I've never worked successfully with a dramaturg, but it's probably very similar with my directors. They're involved at the first notion of the idea. I run, and it's so funny with Carl because he just knows me so well, and the questions he asked me, there's no play, and he's saying, so do you see it with the red wig that you're at? I said, no, I don't think a red wig in this one. I think maybe it's Sir Brown, or he's immediately asking me about and so would you just be in that black dress the entire play? So, well, there might be possibly a peignoir at some point. we're talking about that, but there's no play yet.
But it's kind of amazing that it's that granular, that you're already seeing the visuals and seeing.
And then we work, and then I write. plays really, most of the parts are written for people that I know, that I go into it with just that, oh, I really would like to spend some time with Jennifer Van Dyke, and I just like her so much, and she's such a good actress, and I just like being with her. And so Jennifer's got to be in the play. And then sometimes Carl, when the play is further along, but even in almost when there's more outline than play, he'll say, let's say if we had this actress Nancy Anderson in it, he'd say, well, I see in the outline that Nancy's she's not in a scene for a while at the end, and she's going to want to be in that last scene.
Oh my gosh.
I know, you're right. That character's kind of disappeared a bit. We need, we can't have Nancy play that part and not give her a good finish, So I'm really a playmaker as well as playwright.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you can see that a bit, because I feel like the roles you create for actors are so juicy. Like, I don't think there's a bad role in Lily Dare.
And those it was quite a small cast. I think there were only 5 actors.
Yeah, it's 5 or 6.
And anyway, and 2 of the tracks, as young people call them, were the 2 actors played many roles, and they really were. So they were kind of fantastic parts for an actor, because Jennifer got to play everything from the imperious Madame Aunt Rosalie to the decadent Baroness to the very lovely Mrs. Carlton, and then ultimately she got to play this the beautiful young girl opera singer. I mean, it was really a tour de force for her. And then Christopher Borg, who played so many of the male roles, they had a field day.
And is that doubling intentional, or was it more like, oh, Jennifer should really be all these people, she's fantastic? Or are there?
It was, I guess it's, well, I knew what the story, what story I wanted to tell, and we do think nowadays about just the reality of keeping the cast low. I think even my dreams these days have 6 characters and it gets a black background. You can just know don't go too far, because it's just going to be a problem. But with somebody like Jennifer, who I've worked with in so many plays, and I think, if I'm going to have her, I want to really exploit her, all the possibilities and she's got such versatility, and Christopher Borg as well. I mean, he really is a transformational actor, where people did not think it was the same person at a certain point. And so I see what more can I do, and with Jennifer, it was, she's a mature woman, let's put it this way, she's over 40, and but I knew that she could be, she can play older, but I also thought, I think she can really pull off being this young girl who we first see her, the daughter, who's supposed to be maybe 18, and then she kind of ages to maybe late 20s or something by the end, and I just knew that Jennifer could do that. But hey, listen, in The Divine Sister, Jennifer played the elegant old dowager and a 12-year-old boy.
If people haven't read Divine Sister, I feel like that's a good plug for that. They should go, because the reason I can't stop laughing is she's brilliant in Divine Sister.
Really, but I think it must be odd when some of the regional theaters that do the plays, when they say, well, wait a minute, because you put in the script, it says what the suggested doubling should be based on what we did. You could probably move it in different ways. So I just think sometimes some director might think, so what, one woman played the little boy and the elegant old lady, and I saw a production one time out of town where they really had this old lady playing the little boy. It was quite grotesque, but it was okay. But Jennifer just, that's what I find interesting about writing for specific actors, and knowing what they can do, or challenging them, but knowing that I just know that Jennifer, the way she looks, that she could, with her, she's so straight, and her posture and the way she moves, and that she could play 18, and the audience just accept it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a bit, talking about range, just the role of time in Lily Dare too, because the play is, starts in 1906, ends in 1950, I believe, right? It's a big...
The flashbacks are all in 50, the narration in 1950, yeah.
But it's really, in terms of range for actors, and watching these characters evolve and watching the world evolve. How did you find yourself factoring that in, like looking at how the time period changed or behaviors changed, or were you more focused on character? I'm interested in just the role that time played, I guess.
It's just, I'm just so attuned to that. The past that I, before I was born, has just always been very real to me. Just growing up and being a student of old movies or history, I'm just into it.
Yeah.
So I don't have to even think about it. But because I love the changing of slang over the years, and that was kind of fun to just little nuances of dialogue, of choice of words or phrasing that are a little arcane to the way we speak today. I enjoy that. I like having that accuracy.
Yeah, it's a very fun thing about the show, is looking at the language that gets used and how it evolves. Same with the music and the costumes and all of it.
Yeah, but essentially with the dialogue, just being just the specificity of a phrase, or just even the grammar. It's just like the way they express themselves is slightly different.
Yeah, the pacing, all of it. It's
and I'm just very attuned to that from just growing up on classic film.
Yeah. I do want to open it up before I do. So if people have questions, I haven't really been watching because should be a better moderator here, but I feel like they're going to come in. Let me ask you a few more questions and then we'll open it up to the room. So I guess now is the time. I'm warning everybody. So yeah, I guess here's a good, here's something I wanted to ask you, I think, before we move into the next part of our conversation. But so what advice do you have for theater artists that want to create genre-defying work, or work that works at,
Well, I think you have to really study, really know what you're either parodying or paying homage to it. And I think sometimes when you see these very broad spoofs, I feel like they're not really, the writer and director and cast are really taking it from what they've seen, like on the Carol Burnett show or Mel Brooks movie, that they're not actually going back to the original source material. They're spoofing the spoof. And I'll see like actors who are doing, let's say, something that takes place in the 20s, and they're like, oh, and doing like big gestures. Well, I've never seen anybody in a silent movie do that. But I would prefer if you really were observant and find me the nuance that they're really doing. I would find that more interesting and possibly even more humorous than just, I think I don't know, I saw it on a TV spoof, somebody like, oh dear, yeah, they just don't do that. I occasionally go to colleges they bring me out to pontificate. And I went out to a university in the Midwest where they were doing production of The Lady in Question, which is very specific 1940 anti-Nazi war melodrama. And they're very specific movies that I'm referencing. And so it's a university production. And I was chatting, and I got there after they'd already been rehearsal for 4 weeks or something. And I asked this one girl, I said, so did you watch this movie or that movie or that movie? And So, no, but I watched Sunset Boulevard, and I feel like it had nothing to do with this movie at all, except that it was made, 10 years after the movie I'm talking about. But it just, I think that the teachers should have made them a list, and or put together even just done the work for them, put together the video clips to present to them, that that.
Yeah, in general, it's funny because it does seem like when people think about classics films or classic plays even, or period acting, it does seem to be a lot of, couch fainting and
Yeah, they can do that. They do,
yeah.
do that in those, if you watch, Garbo or Betty Davis, and it's psychologically very accurate to emotions, and it's a slightly more theatrical style than we're used to today, but it's not that exaggerated.
Yeah. Well, and lots of them, strategic pauses, it seems like, are moments of, I mean, there's some very beautiful faces historically in movies. It's like everyone was so good looking. I want to move. I have a couple questions okay, great. So these are meaty, Charles, so I hope you're ready. Great. Oh, well, this one is, so what is the biggest difference between working in film and TV and working in theater? And what is it like to watch your work be translated between the two mediums?
Well, on the real positive side, the movies I've made, like Psycho Beach Party and particularly Die Mommy Die, which was very exciting for me, was to honor this movie in the medium that it was, because when I do Die Mommy Die on stage, I still have to project to the last row of the theater, and it just has to be bigger in energy and physicality because it's a theater. But when I did the movie, it was the source material were movies, so I could really try to play the scenes that Susan Hayward would play, or Lana Turner, or Betty Davis. And that was, I found that just really interesting and fascinating to do. Yeah, so I like that, and there is something very marvelous in a movie where the set is so, you're in a real location, a real house, as opposed to a play where it's more stylized piece. Yeah, no, I love filmmaking. I think in some ways maybe my greatest creative experiences have been making movies. I love the whole thing of it. I love the playing small. I love just the thought. I'm really talking mostly as an actor, and maybe your question is more about as a writer, but it's more clear the difference as an actor. Although I'd say I don't want to lose my train of thought. As an actor, it's very interesting that you can just think something in a close-up and it conveys. What I think is, back as a writer, what I learned on this recent movie we just made, The Sixth Reel, which is, it's kind of a contemporary comedy caper movie. A big difference between screenwriting and playwriting that hadn't really occurred to me, oddly enough, until this last experience, is that in movies, for the most part, since we're talking about they're short scenes generally, and so there's what makes a movie scene seem maybe a little too much like a play is when you shift conversations. In the theater, we do it all the time because we have extended, we could have the first act as one scene, or certainly if there's a long first scene and the characters talk about this, and then it shifts and another character comes on and they shift the conversation, and within that little dialogue between those two people, they might talk about this and then move on to another subject. And in the movie, it seems best when each scene is just about one one piece of information. Because we had in the first scene of the sixth reel, the way I wrote it, the way we filmed it, is between me and this other actor, Doug Plowd, and we start talking about something, and then we moved on to another subject, and then went back to the first subject. And when Carl and I were in the editing room, it just didn't seem right, and we it seems very like too much like a play and not a movie. And so we thought, oh, we just have to cut that middle section out where we switch subjects. And it was a little awkward because some of the material that we discussed that was in that little subject was referenced later in the movie, and we had to then cut those things out too. And so nobody really knows why Margaret Cho is walking with a cane in the movie, but whatever. So yeah, that was interesting. And it's funny that in my other screenwriting, that never came up. I don't know why.
Interesting. But yeah, now that you say that, I guess
Yeah.
That's very right. It's like the dinner party movie kind of feels like a play where they're just at one dinner the whole time and
switch subjects. And yet there are movies like All About Eve. There's that extended party scene, which many things happen. And yet, I guess you could almost say there's a phrase in I guess it's from the early part of the century in plays. It's called a French scene. A French scene being just, I guess, is two people. Is if you have a big scene, let's say one big long scene, the French scene is the first part where it's just two people talking or four people talking. Then when the next beat of the scene would actually be like another scene.
Yes,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So in a way, even All About Eve, if you really thought, I wonder if I watched it again right now, that each of those scenes, maybe they are only talking about one thing at a time, and then it moves to the next. First there's Betty Davis and Thelma Ritter in her bedroom, and she's getting dressed, and that little moment is basically just about is Margot wanting to know has Bill arrived. And that's what that beat's about. Then she goes downstairs, and then the next beat is just them talking about Eve. So I guess in a way you could say that whole long, I don't know, it might run 15 minutes of that movie. It's a long sequence, is made up of short
little scenes,
French scenes.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, here's a question. I'm going to try to pronounce. If I screw up any names, I apologize. But this is from Ed Sparren. I hope I got your name right. You said you may try 2 or 3 times before an idea clicks, and then you run with it. What is that spark or light bulb moment to decide to go with a theme or an idea and to go forward with completing a full draft? Like, how do you know that it's there?
Well, it can come very late too. You never know. You just don't know. I was working on this play recently, just last month. I spent about a month on this play, and I really wrote and rewrote this first scene to death, and just, I don't know. I could sort of say I think I'm going to run into trouble with. I don't think the part really is going to give me what I want, what I need right now, or. It just seemed like rather passive kind of play. So I guess when a play really takes off, it's like this inner feeling. You just don't know. I mean, it could drag on for a while before you just run out of steam on it. Sometimes you can talk it out too much too. You can tell too many people about the idea and run through it until finally kind of you sort of like don't really need to write it anymore. Yeah, I've had that happen too.
Have you started things and then put them aside and then come back to them, or if you?
Well, yes. Well, I keep a full since I've been on the computer since 1997. I think is when I first started writing on a computer. I have a folder just called Notes, and I think it's about 350 pages right now. And I just, any idea I have, just transitory idea for a a play or a movie, I date it and I write, just those couple ideas. And sometimes they can be quite goes on and on for many pages, and then I'll cut and paste it into its own folder. But I have this, it's kind of interesting after all these years that I actually, without trying, I have basically a journal of my entire creative life since 1997.
Which I would love. Someday we should publish that.
It is interesting just seeing these ideas, and I have over the years have gone back and looked through some of that and think, oh, that was an interesting idea. Hey, maybe that was, yeah, and I'll take elements from it. No, I wrote a play. It was commissioned by La Jolla Playhouse. I don't know how many years ago it was. 12 years ago, maybe, I don't know, called The Third Story. And that really was basically a couple of different ideas I'd had in the past, and I combined them and made one not terribly successful play. But it was an interesting play, but problematic.
I have a couple. I want to make sure we get time for everyone who is asking. Here is, I'm trying to think of what is, I'm trying not to judge the question. Okay, here's one from Jim Colleran, who works at Concord with me. But he has, I think, worked with you in the past, and he has a question. So Charles, you mentioned writing for actors and you've discussed doing this during your theater in limbo days. Do you always write with certain actors in mind, even with plays like Tale of the Allergist Wife? What are the pros and cons of writing for a rep company? Is it easier to write in some ways without those limitations?
I think it's easier to write with the limitations. Yeah, I did. I liked when I had my theater company, Theater in Limbo, and I wrote, I don't know how many plays I wrote for them. It was interesting having the stock company and each person. They were all friends of mine. I hate that sound. I'm just so afraid that if I
okay.
I'm gonna lose all of you. I'll lose all of you, and there goes Russia.
I'll have to vamp.
Yeah, anyway, I should have done it earlier. And sorry. Yes. Anyway, what was so interesting with Theater in Limbo is that it was, we weren't starting a theater company. I was just putting on this play in this bar for a weekend and called friends of mine from different parts of my life, and would you do this with me? But it just so happened, maybe it's because I know a lot of flamboyant people, I hadn't thought of it that way, but each one had such a distinct personality that it really was kind of fun was fun to write specifically for them. The actress Julie Halston, we jokingly call her my muse, but I've written so many parts for her, and she has this very specific way of talking with a Comac Long Island accent. And I just loved, I still do, I love writing parts for her, because at this point I know her what I call her trip, her vocal mannerisms and physicality. I know it so well after 30 years of writing for her, and she's plays the lead opposite me in The Sixth Reel. I just know what consonants are funny in her voice, and I can play, and I act it out. I say the line out loud, or I hear it, while I'm writing it, that, that'll be funny hearing her say certain, we need the name of a car, or hearing her say, the Buick LeSabre is funny coming out of her mouth as opposed to calling it a Chevrolet or something. I just know her so well, and now with Jennifer, I know her so well. How best to use her, but maybe what not to do. And yeah, I enjoy it. I like those limitations. I've written some plays without knowing who's going to be in it, but like The Allergist Wife was originally not. I was just writing it just cold, but while I was working on it, I saw Linda Lavin in a play. And I thought, oh, she'd just be the perfect one. And then at that point, I kept hearing her
Oh, funny. Like she's haunting you or something.
Yeah, I heard it. And I was lucky that no, I was so lucky that we got her to play the part. But some of the other roles I didn't write specifically, and in some ways I saw it. It was interesting in The Allergist's Wife, the part that Michelle Lee played. Actually, in my head, I saw the character very differently. That play, for those of you who don't know, and it was this Upper West Side. Uh, upper middle class retired allergist and his very discontented wife who's going through a terrible midlife crisis, and this mysterious woman from comes and gets seduces the husband and the wife. And I originally thought that it was almost like a New Yorker cartoon, that the seductress should be the somewhat dowdy woman. They're all about 60, and I thought I pictured her as just this woman who's not necessarily attractive, but has such a wonderful just sense of her own sexuality that it's very seductive. I've known people like that. I know a woman who every single feature would not be conventionally attractive, but she's been married 4 times, and she's
working.
and she's very there's just a great sexuality about her, very seductive. So I kind of saw the characters as just a woman who had a very, very interesting, asymmetrical haircut and wore big jewelry, barbaric kind of, primitive jewelry, but was kind of dowdy. But then Michelle Lee was spectacularly beautiful and had this great figure, and just everything about her is just conventionally very attractive. And I didn't see it at first, but in a sense, I think commercially, I think it actually was probably better that we did have Michelle. I think she not only gave a wonderful performance, but also she gave the play a kind of a glamour and a genuine sort of sexy vibe that
the audience loved her.
I actually think that it helped the whole play.
So I feel like I know that other woman very well. When you talked about large jewelry.
Yeah, just sort of like prematurely gray and just very interesting, and shawls.
Yes. I love this question, mostly because it's about licensing, but I also am just interested to hear your take. So this is from Terry, and Terry asks, I'm considering producing Vampire of Lesbians of Sodom in a relatively conservative community. Do you have any pointers or advice? Which, I mean, it's so interesting to me because in some ways, these aren't new plays. I mean, these plays have been done in a ton of time, but I think for audiences that maybe need to be converted to the Church of Charles Busch, like, do you have any suggestions?
Well, I think it depends who your audience is. I mean, there is a kind of a hip audience everywhere, or an LGBT audience everywhere you go. That might be very just have a real good time. But the thing is, I like to think about all these places, even Vampire Lesbians, which of course today is so tame. I mean, really, I don't think there's anything in that play, and even in this kind of politically correct world we live in, I think that some of my other plays, there are a couple, I guess, would you call problematic things that maybe could be edited out possibly, but I think in Vampire Lesbians, oddly enough, I don't know, I haven't read it in many years, but that might be, but the point is that there's kind of a sweet thing in it. And I think one of the reasons why that play ran for 5 years and just sort of took off was that the title seemed so outrageous and kind of lurid, because it is kind of like almost like an exploitation title, but underneath all the camp, it was basically about two women who have this long relationship. They're frenemies or enemies. They're really enemies for, in this play it's 2,000 years, but let's say 30 years if you're talking naturalistic play, and then find at the end that they've kind of outlived their contemporaries, which happens a lot, believe me, when you get older, and ultimately they sort of seek each other, some comfort from each other, because there's nobody else. And I know it. I'm living it now, baby. You know, I'm living it. I am the vampire lesbian now, and I just there are times when I'm very wistful about that. I don't have that. The way things have worked out. I don't have that many people who knew me back when. And I have dear friends from 1982 on. And then I've got my friend Andy, who knew me since 14, but that's kind of it, And when you get older, you kind of you sort of miss, like, oh, the person who knew me, really the earliest incarnation of me, yeah,
it's kind of nice.
And yet it's also hard because they think, oh, should I look up that person again? And then you think, well, really what I miss is who we were and not who we are today. And so maybe you sometimes you can go back, but sometimes maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah, sometimes it's horrible.
Yeah, but that's in a way, there is that underpinning in that play, as campy and as it is. And I think what I always like is that, and I hope that when people do these plays of mine, but I've just let it go and just be glad that they're flattered that they're doing it, is it'd just be nice if the directors and the director gets the actors to always be aware that there is a human place in the comedy, to find it and be outrageous and creative and all that, but don't neglect the core of honest sentiment. I think you miss out on that if you just. I've seen productions of my plays that just are going for the very broad camp, and I think that I think you can be be campy but still have moments of genuine suspense, genuine tenderness, genuine feeling of loss, or all these things. Carl and I were telling some of the actors who were new to us and a couple of plays that we've done, that we never spoof the plot. We never make fun of the big dramatic moments ever. We play that for real, as if you were just doing a drama. We have fun with around that.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have time for one more. So, and this is a big question, but I do want to ask this. So you have referred to yourself as a parodist, or someone who plays like homage to old films and actresses. And some of your plays also specifically state that the humor of the characters shouldn't come from the gender differences of the character and the actor. So I'd love to hear opinions about kind of how drag and what drag performance is different than the kind of
character
you take.
Well, it's really going back to what I was just saying. I mean, now there's drag performance, it's just as wide ranging as anything. I mean, there's so many different styles, and I think often a performer takes their style is often predicated on their physicality. If how broad they want to get. I had found, just for myself, starting the first time I played a female character that I wrote for myself was in college, and I think, although I like to think that I've grown and a lot as a writer, as an actor, this essence of who I am as a performer was there the very first time I did it, because I don't know, there was a certain reality to my appearance, the way I presented myself, and I was always interested in pathos as well as comedy. It was there from the very beginning, and maybe my lifelong study of these famous actresses' mannerisms and thought process, it was just so in me that I it just I say naturalism, but I guess it's naturalism as done by MGM in 1939. It's not, but still, it's different from other drag that can just be fabulous in its total large presentation. I don't know. Did I answer this question at all? I guess I just have fun. I've been experimenting more in the last few years with women playing male roles, basically because since I've had Jennifer Van Dyke in my plays, and Jennifer has a kind of a Katharine Hepburn, Garbo feel to her, the way her look, and so it's been fun. I only did that once before years ago in Shanghai Moon. We tried it, and I didn't think it worked so well. But despite the very talented actress who played these roles, but with Jennifer, it's just been interesting, having her play what's called the trouser role. The young poet, adventurer, or all these parts. It's just she can do it. I sometimes told her one time when we did this play Judith of Bethulia, where she played the young poet, and we were sort of experimenting on how she should do this, and I said, well, you're really not playing a man as much as you're playing a great actress who's playing tonight, Hamlet. And so it's not about her necessarily trying to be transformational butch, but just this kind of romantic idea of Katharine Hepburn playing Hamlet or something. You know what I mean? Yeah, and was very interesting playing with that, and so I've enjoyed doing that, and because usually it's always just been men playing women.
Yeah.
And I think in all these the published editions, I do think there's always a little thing I write in saying that this is how we did it, but you could certainly switch genders in any of these parts, or play it just as shockingly, men playing men and women playing women. It can be done. So, I just so I can go either way. I have fun though with my plays sometimes, just in what roles I choose to have cross-gender casting. I tend to like to not do the obvious. When we did Psycho Beach Party, when I did Psycho Beach Party, I wrote the part of the mother for a wonderful actress who died tragically young, named McGann Robinson, and McGann and I were the same height, and she had this marvelous sort of contralto speaking voice, and so people kind of thought that in Vampire Lesbians that we were both in drag, or maybe she was in drag and I wasn't. That you didn't know. And so I thought in Psycho Beach Party, I wrote her this sort of parody Joan Crawford, Mommy Dearest kind of part. And what I thought was interesting was that in most of the play, she had this big wig and heavy makeup, and even the body, her foundation garments were so stylized, this body. So she really did seem like a guy in drag. And then there was a little flashback at the end where you saw behind a scrim the mother in her youth, and McGann then was wearing this very fitted dress. You saw her real body, and she had the soft wig, and suddenly you saw, oh, she's actually this,
woman,
lovely young woman. And that was such an interesting moment theatrically. So I've enjoyed that. And I've enjoyed my own performances sometimes, doing when I'm playing a female character who's then dressed in men's clothes. I thought that was kind of fun, really shaking it up and not just doing the obvious.
But I have to say, and but yeah, I think it is very exciting. If we have any performers or directors in the room, the flexibility with your plays is, I feel like it's rare and kind of tremendously, challenging and rewarding for actors. So
get the best person for each part.
Yeah, dive in though. I'm sure there's been, I've actually never seen a licensed production of one of your shows, but now I really want to go. I want to see what people are doing when
you do them in very different styles, and sometimes they play very fast and loose. That maybe it's a good thing that you and I don't know in advance, because
the high school production of Lily Dare is forthcoming.
I have seen I was the past decade, I was doing a lot of traveling, doing it as a cabaret performer, and occasionally Tom Judson, my musical director, and I would play at theaters where they were doing one of my plays, and we would do like the Monday night, and somebody's on the set of my own of Die Mommy Die or even Psycho Beach Party, and it was all this sand and we'd see some of these productions, and sometimes they start adding musical numbers and all sorts of things.
Don't do that.
Wow,
Say to the audience if there are directors in the room, and I'm sure there are. No adding.
And sometimes they're much longer. The play will be a good half hour longer than the original production. Really?
Well, it's Die Mommy Die, the musical, but you did not. But thank you, Charles, for being with us today. And I know we didn't get to all the questions, but I really appreciate everyone asking questions. And I think, we can't clap for you because it's Zoom, which sucks, but people feel free to say thanks in the chat, everyone, because I feel like just having you in the room and hearing all about your writing has been super rewarding. Just housekeeping stuff. And also too, can we go see your movie now? Is it available to watch now? How do we?
No. We're it's a long process. We're
Okay.
on the film festival circuit, so it's very likely that it'll be at a film festival in your city. But
so watch.
Yes, but ultimately the goal is, and we're already speaking to distributors, and it will be eventually, at your local cinema and streaming on hopefully Netflix or
one of those.
or something like that. So that'll be a while.
Okay, excellent. So we'll watch for that. Everyone, if you didn't read Lily Dare, please read Lily. Now you want to, and you want to read all the other plays too. And then we're taking a break for September, so just housekeeping. So we're gonna go dark for September and retool. Theater in New York is trying to reopen. Everyone knock on wood and, say thanks to, I don't know, just cross your fingers and all of that. But I think we're planning on coming back in October with some exciting new developments and new plays, hopefully in conjunction with some productions happening originally and around the country in New York as well. So thank you, Charles. And we'll wrap up and we'll see you at the next book club.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.